Morning, Jim. Thanks very much for taking the time to join me on the Culture Corner podcast this morning. It's great to have you with us.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem at all. Just before we get into it, obviously we've known each other for a long time. So anybody that's listening that doesn't know you, if you can give us a bit of an insight into who Jim Tidball is and your background and experience and responsibilities, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a digital leader, I suppose, is how I'd sort of frame myself, but focused around transformation. I've been working in this industry for a little over 30 years now. And I moved from, I suppose, being a programmer, doing that kind of stuff in the early days, now to leading teams and helping organizations transform and get the best from digital to help them be successful and things like that. So my responsibilities and that are mainly around delivering strategy, but ultimately executing that strategy as well. So understanding where businesses are, where they're trying to go, and how digital can enable that as well. So good career, but now I'm in that position where I'm more in leading digital and helping business get the best from it.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim. That's really appreciate that overview. And I think you've sort of answered this question anyway, but I normally open up with, how did you get into tech? I think you mentioned you were a program. Was it natural from a young age that you were always going to go down that route, or did you fall into it like some other people?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always liked technology, even from a young age. I used to help my dad get the TV working right, or the video and things like that. So I was always interested in tech, I suppose, and then sort of video games when I was younger. But I was always interested how those work. So the programming side of things. So I got into programming at around about the age of 18, 19, I suppose.
Yeah.
But then moved on into more management roles, managing programmers, but then moving out into sort of delivery roles, project managers, business analysts. So I suppose it was a sort of transition from IT to digital, which was
Right.
probably 15 years ago, which was more around taking it from just the tech to actually towards people and culture and things like that. So I got really interested, realizing it wasn't about just putting technology in. You actually had to think about the business change and things like that. So yeah, so I suppose still really interested in the tech, but actually find now I've become more successful as I understand business needs and strategy of that business and how digital can enable it. So yeah.
Very good. It sounds like that's your love, moving away from the tech, but looking after the how digital can enable
Mm,
businesses, but the culture and the people, and bringing that along as well. So
yeah.
was it quite a quick shift, Jim, from realizing that, yeah, I do like the tech. I was a programmer, but really my heart lies in the other side of it.
Yeah, I think it was a choice. And I talked to some of my team about this today when they moved from sort of like operator to manager to leader. And I think it was a choice. And I suppose it was a realization. It was a fast-paced game to keep up with some of
Yeah,
that, the knowledge and the expertise that it took to become a programmer as it moved forward. And I'm not sure that was something that interested me, but what I realized was I had a bit more of a skill around leading people,
yeah,
understanding people that come from various reasons, I suppose, from poor leaders to good leaders,
yeah,
both important in
yeah.
my journey. Learn stuff from each side, I suppose,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think I get more joy from helping people grow, helping
yeah.
businesses grow ultimately, and adding value, leaving something behind that I know I've helped create and nurture and have an impact. So yeah, I think I enjoy that kind of stuff now more so than doing the techie. Although I'm interested in it and I have to
Yeah.
have a knowledge of it, but a more broad breadth, I suppose, than depth now.
Than that. Yeah, yeah. And final quick digging around that.
Mm,
Was there, before we move on to Ardent and the culture there and how that
mm.
evolves and things, um, Was there anybody that had a pivotal or instrumental moment in your career? You look back on it. Was there, from a
Mm,
mentorship perspective, or a
yes,
really good leader who good leaders bring other people on, don't they? And
yes,
if they don't try and keep
yes.
people down, they bring them on and they give them opportunities. So, did you experience that in your career that allowed you to get to the heights that you are at today?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I've had quite a few influences, and especially in government, really. But I suppose one of the biggest ones that memorable for me was when I was at the Maritime Coast Guard
Yeah.
Agency. I was the chief technology officer there, and the CEO was Sir Alan Massey, who was the second Sea Lord of the Afghanistan War. So,
Wow.
an amazing man, amazing
Yeah.
leader, and I took a lot from him. He had time for everyone. He spoke to everyone. He knew everyone's name. It was in a big
Yeah.
organization like that. And he did a bit of coaching with me, especially around public speaking, communicating, collaborating, that kind of stuff, which he was really good at. So Sir Alan was an inspiration to me. Still is, although retired. But what he done and how he brought people forward when things were challenging, I thought was amazing. So in the second year, I managed to get Leader of the Year, which was an award that they
Nice.
gave out, which again was
Nice.
an even bigger endorsement of what he taught me and what I did. So yeah, Sir
Not
Alan.
not a bad mentor and coach to have, Jim. I don't think there's many
Absolutely.
people that can reference a sir as their mentor on the podcast, mate. No, so
Yeah.
thanks very much for that. That's brilliant. But so we're going to talk about it's culture corner. We talk about culture and high performing teams, and one of the
Yes.
things I wanted to ask you, because I know you've got a real fondness of where you are at the moment. So
Yeah.
what's the culture like at Ardent, and how do the senior leaders ensure that because it doesn't stay static, does it that it evolves and progresses in the right manner?
Yeah. So culture is important to me, and it's why I join um, companies, organizations, because it's one of the key questions I ask in the interview, actually, is
Right.
what's the culture like? Because it's important I'm walking in to an evolving culture or a well-established culture because I find it's one of those things I've over the years realized it's so important.
Yeah.
Um, and transformation fails if culture isn't there to receive it in the way. So it's a good culture, and it's evolving, which is good. But it's evolving in the right way.
Yeah.
So they're recognizing, and there are areas that we need to improve on, and it needs to come from the top that it needs to be demonstrated and all of that. Um, so they're very big on investing in their people, which I think is something of good reason I joined. That's important, and that's not just around development and things like this, but also socializing. Making sure people are well looked after. Bonuses, all the things that they sort of help people thrive and things like this. So they care, which I think is a really good thing. They're also really good on continuous improvement,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they recognize things can't stay static, and that's what good growth is all
Yeah.
about. So a lot of that now is building into change agility. Everything's always changing, isn't it? So that's hard, isn't it? Because we've got to build resilience into
Yeah.
the business and things like that. But that comes with good support, good leadership and things like that. So I look across the business, my own peers as really strong leaders, which I think is great to see. And then apart across other parts of the business, high performers,
Yeah.
which is really good. And those high performers are recognised and rewarded and things like that. That just improves things as well. So overall, really good culture. As I said, evolving, which is great. They're recognising things need to improve and change. So that's good.
Fantastic. And was there, I know you think about the sectors that you've worked in, Jim. So
Mm.
we first met when you were back in the days at the NHS many moons ago for us. But, and then you've gone into government, you've done RNLI, which I know that
Yeah.
you were proud
Mm.
of. Is the why of an organisation, and was it Ardent's why, was that important to you? Is that something that attracts you to a role?
Very. Yeah, their mission, their
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah. Yeah.
very, very important. In fact, I use it as a key anchor to drive change and adoption because that's
Right.
our job matters. I think was the line they used at the Coast Guard. they save lives.
Yeah, yeah.
If we in IT or digital at the time didn't help improve things or change things, lives could be lost. So the mission and purpose is really important to me, and Ardent is where I work now is all about delivering life improving change for communities and future generations.
Right.
And when you break that down, that's because we support nationally significant, important infrastructure projects. Without those, which take many years, some of them, thing it will have impact on communities and future generations. So how we're working that now, which is really good at the bit in Ardent, is starting to link that to everyone in the business. We're all playing that
Yeah,
part in driving this thing forward. So we help these major infrastructure projects be successful or get them off the ground because we play an important part right at the start of all of it. Without us, these things don't happen.
okay.
So that's what's really good. So we're doing more on that, but the mission to me is critical because that's why do we turn up? And hopefully, it isn't just to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're working on that. It's an area again that not everybody understands, but it's again being recognised as an important way to communicate it and make it more transparent so everybody understands if they don't turn up and they don't work in a way that's productive and evolves, this mission is at risk. So yeah.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. I like the way that you link it through the business. So,
Mm,
do you think showcasing to people within the business what impact they have on the end result then gets greater buy-in,
yes.
creates high
Yeah.
performance? Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the key questions in our annual engagement survey. That people understand that the work they do has that impact on our mission. And that, like in any place I've ever worked, if they don't communicate that, like what have we done, the so what of what we've
Mm.
done over the last year or two, or what we're going to do, which is as well, so it's really important. People sometimes disconnect. They don't see that their role matters, and
Yeah.
actually it does. So whether it's in operations or whether it's in delivery, or those kind of things, HR, digital, we all part of the operating model that drives that forward. So I think it is key, and we did a bit of that at our recent all sort of company offsite. And we produced a video, of some of the projects we're
Ah,
doing, and we had some
nice.
of not just the clients, but some of the communities as well, and it really stuck in people's heads. And I think everyone takes that away and realizes, they're playing part of that delivering those benefits and things like that. So it's really good. So yes, definitely more of that because it's one of my things I'm working on with my team because they sometimes don't quite see where they're connecting and where they enable it. So it's more work to do in that space.
Yeah, you see, allowing them to visualize the end result, isn't it? To like physically see that their impact
Yes,
on things. So that's
absolutely.
fantastic. That's part of the
Mm,
evolving change that you're going through, isn't it? To ensure that
yeah,
that happens and you
very much.
showcase it moving forward.
Yeah.
So, brilliant. Thanks for that, Jim. One of the things I wanted to discuss with you because I know that you've done this over the years, thinking
Mm,
about the roles that you've been in. So you've built and structured high performing teams
mm,
on a number of occasions. You've and probably not from the ground up. I think, unless I'm wrong, a majority of the times you've dropped into teams and gone through the change there. So
yes.
one of the things
Yes.
that you mentioned to me previously when we've chatted is 8 behaviors of a high
Mm,
performing team. So there's going to be,
yeah.
so I'm going to say, how do you build and structure high performing teams, and what is the 8 behaviors of a high performing team? Because I think there's people listening to this who'll get massive benefit from that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so our high performing teams, which is sometimes thrown around a lot.
Mm.
For me, I almost think it's having a team that's almost a bit invincible. That they can just keep going and they deliver success. They trust each other. They're continuously improving. They're adapting. They're pivoting. It's all of this because the world we live in, especially in digital, is unpredictable. Whilst we try and do everything, so it's delivered in a way that everybody wants. It's not always the way it happens. Um, so I think, especially over the last 15 years, when I've walked into organisations and been sort of a leader of teams and and upwards of 60, 70 people. I've understood the team, and it's really important. So I have a sort of a method, really, I suppose, that I get my arms around my team, understand what's going on, what's working, what's not working. It's that sort almost like a retrospective, but
Yeah.
I take time to talk to everyone, and then I look for common patterns, themes, risks, almost issues, I suppose, without sort of making it too clinical. But trying to understand what's going on, why it's happening. Then I understand the business. I get out and understand them, because they'll tell me your team aren't doing this, your team don't do that well enough. There's different views and opinions, and that's important to understand all sides. But then I start putting things in place, and often it's because we're not communicating well, or the business aren't playing nicely with us, and it's a sort of he who shouts loudest and
Yeah.
throwing things at us, and my team are doing their best to try and respond and keep up. And then ultimately we got to put things in place that allow us, like processes and things like that. If processes aren't there, then often things are just happening in an unstructured way, and it means that people are going to get burnt out. So so I don't think I've been into a place where the team is high performing. So so it's almost a bit of okay, I've noticed some common things here, I know what to do, and I have a bit of a repeatable blueprint, which has been successful in the last three places I've worked. Not always fully high performing, I'm not going to stand here and say that, but with Ardent now, I'm definitely getting there. So it feels we're moving forward. So I suppose to your question around some of the behaviours, the first one to me, which is the most important, is psychological safety.
Yeah.
So if that is not there in a team, then people are holding things back. They're potentially blaming each other, or things like this. And there's no trust, so everybody's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So by establishing psychological safety, it takes time. It isn't like a 2-week job. It takes time. You start to get the team to trust each
Okay.
other, me, all of that, and then we move forward. I'll rattle off some of the others that I think are important. Communication, collaboration. So, not just with ourselves as a team, but outwards towards the business as well. We communicate with each other regular, what we're all doing, tell the business what we're doing, what's coming, all of this. So we open up those channels. That's really important. Then we collaborate, we work together. We don't just we do it all. And sometimes that does happen in businesses. They throw it all at the digital teams and tell them to do it. Then I throw in others, which I think are really important: accountability and ownership, which often, if it isn't there, nobody's taking responsibility. Everybody's back to this blame culture almost. Things aren't being delivered consistently. Continuous improvement, continuous learning, those things are really important. We don't just accept things as they are. We think about, is there a better way? How do we improve ourselves?
Yeah.
I often find when digital teams start to improve their ways of working, it sometimes moves outwards. Others start to see, oh, they're doing that, why don't we? So it's almost a bit of a change adoption technique, I suppose. Continuous learning is good, making time for us to learn, knowledge share, especially when you've got a lot of diversity and capabilities across your teams. And then the other one I think is sort of customer focus. So we're a service provider, especially when we're in government. Who's our customer? Do we understand them? Do we understand their needs? Do they understand us and what we are and what we're doing? So it comes back to that communication. And then the final one, which I think is sort of a bit of a resilience thing, but again really important in today's world, is change agility. So it's almost being comfortable being uncomfortable. It's that kind of stuff. Adopting well. We support each other. We remove blockers. We're one team. So if the project manager is trying to get the software developers to work together, and they're like, we haven't got time for you, then ultimately we're going to fail or slow down. So having the ability to be resilient, maintain continuous delivery, that kind of stuff, but also pivot which is really good. I'm dealing with something at the moment because things haven't gone to plan. And
Yeah,
sometimes that impacts everyone because they put a lot of effort into it and it's frustrating. And you've got to allow time for the team to air that and all of that. And we understand, but we have to pivot. You know, we can't just sit here and moan and grumble. We've got to move forward. So change agility to me after psychological safety is probably the next important one because it's continuous. It's coming at us. How do we maintain that? Um, so yeah, I think for me, you know, as a leader, when I was a younger leader, I suppose I thought it was all about having answers. But
yeah,
now I
yeah,
realize it's about creating the environment for teams to thrive and be successful. And I think that's my focus now is how do I create the environment for my teams to be the best they can be? Then how do I expand that out across the business so they are also, you know, not moaning about things. Things just work. You know,
yeah,
they get what they need and they're able to do their jobs effectively. So yeah, so I love it. I love it. Just because we get results and we're starting to see and see my team that, you know, I've been there 10 months now. And when I walked in, they were a bit broken and battered and bruised, you know, and the business were sort of demanding more than they could give, but they were just doing their best. And I put a bit of a protection around them. I showed them
yeah,
that's fine, everything comes to me now, don't you worry. And they didn't believe that at first, but you know, by signaling that out to the business and communicating, you know, my team are important to me and their welfare and well-being is number one priority.
yeah,
People understood that. People are empathetic. They don't want to break my team. So so that kind of thing allowed me to start to show them you know, I'm a good guy. I'm not here to make a name for myself. I'm here to get the best out of you.
yeah,
And their success is my success. You know, I know
yeah,
it sounds a bit cheesy, but um, I often think it's not for me. It's reflective glory almost in a way.
yeah,
You know, I often see this thing where they get sort of called out as achieving well. I know that's a reflection of me supporting them and leading them. So yeah, so I do enjoy it, and we are almost high performing. I don't know, I don't know as the measure to say we are now high performing, but the team are communicating well, they're collaborating well, they're pairing up together where they used to work on their own.
yeah. It's a
They're
big thing.
communicating outwards as well as inwards and things like this. So I'm starting to see all the right behaviours that are starting to be demonstrated by all of them. So it's really good, and then we're coming to that almost that not invincible, but I feel a bit invincible more like that because it's like curveball comes in, we can deal with that.
Brilliant. Yeah,
You know, we support each other, we can adapt and things like that. So yeah, it's an area I'm quite passionate about because, as I said at the start, I love that. I love walking away knowing I've impacted on people,
yeah,
that I've helped them go from where they were to where they are now, which is a highly successful person that loves doing what they do. So yeah, so it's a real motivator for
yeah.
me, I think.
Absolutely, you can tell you're passionate about it, and
Mm,
you know, when you glow when you're talking about your team and where they were and where they are now. And I think
yes.
we've talked in the past about building trust. You said psychological safety and building trust. Do you think? I was going to say, how do you do that when you drop into a team? You're the new person, you know. You referenced there, like, I'm not here to make a name for yourself
Yeah.
at their expense, but you also mentioned something about getting round my team, looking after them, you
Yeah.
know, they're a little
Yeah.
bit battered and bruised. Do you think that those sort of traits and the way that you operate there automatically, you know, builds that trust and starts to create that safe environment?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the person sometimes because
Mm,
some people will be naturally distrustful of someone when they come in because they don't know who they are. So others are a bit more open and things like this. But I have a few methods really. So a lot of it is around communication, engagement. So I set up regular touch points, one-to-ones with everyone. Now I haven't got a huge team at the moment, so I can afford quite regular one-to-ones
yeah,
with them. That now allows me to understand them, what they're doing, you know, the things that I might be able to help. So I write a lot of that down. I can help that person. I can help that. Then I set up team sessions as well. So regular workshops. We come together, we talk about what we're doing, we celebrate all of that. So I create these sessions that allows us to start to connect.
Yeah.
I think without those, things remain siloed,
Yeah.
and it's important to sort of break those silos down. And a lot of it then starts to evolve, I suppose. And building trust for me, I don't know, sort of, I suppose, like most of the things, showing them that I'm there to help them and support them, is important. When they then do something well, I will promote that and tell everyone. And I
Yeah.
jump on like a monthly all company call. I'm I call them out as what they've done
Nice.
and the value
Nice.
they've added, and that kind of thing. They start to realize I'm not there just to make a name for myself, tell everyone how amazing I am. I'm
Yeah.
telling them how amazing my team is. So it takes time. And I think I would never want to say to my team, "Do you trust me?" Because it's probably a bit too direct. But I can sort of see, I can see it's coming. It's coming, and I think it comes because, um, you know, when I suggest something which is maybe a new way of it, they start to take it on a bit more than they did at the start because
Yeah.
if I introduce something a bit different to the way they do things, they don't want to change. They're worried that that might cause them more problems than it solves and things like this. So I think I almost measure it now by their openness and
Yeah.
understanding to take on new ideas and things like this, which means they're starting to trust me, they're starting to respect me, they understand what I've come from, and what I've done, and now what I'm demonstrating I'm doing with them. So it takes time. We have fun as well as a team. That's important.
Yeah.
And again, every sort of quarter, we're allowed to go out and have a social. And we've done a few of those as a team, and that's just sort of forgetting about work and having a bit of food and having a bit of fun. Those kind of things as well. Again, why I joined Ardent to me are really really important. It's not just all about work.
Yeah.
It's about to know each other. So yeah. So a key one, I think easier with your own team, harder across the business because that
Yeah.
obviously those
Yeah.
aren't relationships or teams that you're working in day to day. So that takes a bit more effort, but similar approach, engage, communicate,
Yeah.
deliver on what you will say you're going to do. So especially if that benefits external stakeholders and things like this, because they'll start to realize that you are helping them and all of this. So trust is really key, and you can build that across any business. Everybody trusts everyone, then wow,
You're
that's
away,
high
aren't you?
performing team, isn't it? I
Yeah.
suppose.
You're away. You're away. I was going
Yeah.
to, one of my questions later on was going to be to you about how do you build trust with stakeholders quickly?
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
I'll mention it now because of what you said there. About,
Yeah.
do you think the main thing is saying what you're going to do and delivering on it
Yeah, I
in that
think
time
so.
scale?
I think so. I think again, I'm constantly learning and checking myself because when I communicate, I know sometimes not everybody understands what I'm saying. And when I was at the MOD, previous role, I really had to adapt my communication style because of diversity of
Yeah.
people that worked there. I realized I couldn't just say something everybody understood that message. I had to adapt my messaging. So yeah, I do think sort of trust, like most of these things, is getting in there, understanding what the business needs across different parts. Hopefully, if you can find that there's something that they all need, you could deliver a wider impact and then communicate it, demonstrate what difference that's made, and then people start thinking, "Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah, they're
Yeah.
starting to listen to us. They're starting to help us." Um, there will always be different types of stakeholders, ones that may never trust you or really, really got to work hard on. And you get different types of personalities, don't you? I suppose
Yeah.
in any
Yeah. Yeah.
business.
Absolutely.
Um, Ones that are a bit more challenging but play a pivotal role, and you need them, they need you, we need each other. It's almost starting to build up that relationship. It takes a bit longer, and it has to be done in a more subtle way because they start thinking you're trying to get something from them, might close up. So understanding them, again, I always understand them, their challenges. I start to think about how we might be able to help them, whether it's a quick win or something a bit more strategic that might start to help. Often then you start to see a bit of a ripple happening, and a lot of it, what I try and do back to those creating the environments is, if things aren't working today, technology is a bit broken or not responsive enough, and things like this, we've got to fix that. We don't want those to be a reason that people grumble about IT and things like this. We want to be talking about what they need in the future and
Yeah,
how do we evolve that kind of stuff. So I think it is important to address the risks and the issues and things like that. It's almost what I term it as a bit of a sort of a phased approach to any business I walk into. Stabilize things. So I need to
yeah,
stabilize things. I need to build firm foundations, fix the issues that are holding us back. We're talking about transformation and things like this, but we've got these things that just catches out, makes us reactive, takes our time up, frustrates us and you and all this. So
yeah,
let's
yeah, yeah.
fix that.
Understanding it.
And
Yeah,
and then we can start to scale things. Then we can start to add new capabilities or optimize existing things. And trying to land that message when you come in, especially in my type of role, because they want transformation. They want
yeah,
all the new AI. They want automation. They want the latest technology platforms. But often, where you'll come in and things are not under the surface. Things are not in a great way. Whether it's the people, the processes, the data, it's important to send that message out and get senior leadership all the way and across the business to understand we need to pause a bit here and stabilize our ways of working, our tech, our data, and then we can start to invest in the things that we really need, and drive transformation forward. So it's a bit of a sort of a walk, run, fly. I sort
yeah.
of use those three. So we need to learn to walk, before we can sort of run and fly. But same sort of thing, stabilize stuff, and then we can transform. So yeah,
Perfect.
use a bit of metaphors. I
Yeah.
like metaphors because it sometimes breaks it down. People remember those things.
They
Yeah,
understand it, don't they? And it clicks. It does.
yeah,
It does click. I think I'm going to ask you this because I know you do
mm,
it, and I know you've mentioned it briefly here. And but
mm,
also, I've spoke to people that don't do it. Surprisingly, how
mm.
important is it to showcase what IT, tech, digital, the team? How important is it to showcase
Oh,
to the business and the execs what the technology teams do, and how frequently would you do it?
yeah. So important. So it's probably one of the most important things I think I do. I remember years and years ago at the Coast Guard, a very senior person said to me, "You're like a salesman, Jim." And I took it a bit offensive at the time because I was thinking car salesman, but I think I know what he meant. He was like, you're selling your service, you're selling your products and what we need. You're helping us understand what they are, how we get the best from them, and all of this." So it was almost change adoption, but I think in the way he said it was a bit took me aside. But so communication is so key because I often find when you don't communicate, especially in the type of role that we play in any business, people think we're not doing anything.
Yeah,
So they think we're just not doing stuff. So, and we're always doing things. We're running the business. We're changing the business. We're governing the business from an IT digital perspective. So let's communicate that. So every opportunity I get, whether it's on all business platform that we can communicate, we do that. We communicate on a weekly basis at Ardent now.
right.
So there's weekly comms that goes out. We are always in there. In fact, every role I've been in the last 15 years, once I get in there, we become one of the most regular teams communicating out to the business, and whether that's telling them what's coming so they get excited about it, or telling them what's happening today from like an IT operations, disruption, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Or just generally talk about things that we're running as a team. We want to understand you more, discover. We communicate. So there's multiple initiatives going on, and it's important to tell people. That's, to me, it's the key for business change and
yeah,
adoption, especially when technology comes in. So yes, hard to get IT people to communicate because it's not natural behavior.
yeah,
And not all IT people, but it's more introversion. So people quite like to sort of work on things, not tell everyone about it, but having to evolve people towards that behavior to get them to more communicate more often and in a way that's non-technical. That's the other challenge as well,
Yeah.
because we don't, used to
Yeah. Yeah.
communicate
Yeah.
technical stuff. People don't understand it. So it's a bit of an art and it takes time, but we continue to do it, and people then start to see the benefits of it because people are aware of things way before they actually then start to happen, and people are excited about it, want to be involved, all of that. So my team is starting to see the benefits of that, which is great. So yes, key to
Key
transformation.
is important. Yeah, yeah. And just to pick up on something you said before, which
Mm,
I think's brilliant. Again, people will be wondering, how often should I do this? How important is it? Um,
mm,
you were saying celebrating success is the way I'd
yes,
use it, but you were saying
yes,
shout out to people. I was going to say, does it? Because people think celebrate success, it's got to be this grand gesture, and it's
right.
what what's your thoughts on that?
No, so yeah, absolutely. So celebrating success again, it's a major thing as part of business change and adoption. So especially if it's a big long project that you're doing. But I build it into my team's culture now. Without saying a sort of coining of it, it's like continuous winning.
Yeah,
We're little wins
yeah, yeah,
build
yeah,
up to bigger
yeah.
wins, and it's really important that we celebrate that and recognise it. So we have a few little things we're doing as a team. Wins of the week. So we have a loop
Nice.
where on a Thursday we get an automated message that tells us to log your wins of the week, and it's little things versus great big stuff that we've been working on for weeks, months, and stuff like that. And then on a Friday, when we come together as a team, we just review those and celebrate that. We do other stuff as well as a team. So we do a bit of gratitude and recognition as a team, which is when we first did it, everyone felt a little bit uncomfortable. But the way
Yeah,
it sort of works is we sort of go
yeah,
round the broom and you
yeah.
can thank anybody for things that they've done to help you, support you. And they love it now because, they're all thanking each other. Thanks for helping me do that thing or help leaning in, it just shows each other. So that internal recognition, to me is really key. And again, building on the whole psychological safety as well. Doing it externally is just as important. But it has to be done in a balanced way because you got to blow your trumpet, I suppose. You got to
Yeah.
tell everyone what you're doing and all of that. Too much of it, people start to, especially if they're not necessarily doing that kind of thing. So there's a bit of
Yeah,
a balance, and I
yeah, yeah.
sometimes have to check myself because I'm like, all right, people start getting a bit annoyed hearing about all your successes in a way. So I do it, and again, there's a few platforms that work that we do through communication channels. We celebrate stuff in the right way, but we communicate in a way that matters to the business. So it isn't just we did this or we fixed that. It's the so what of it. What value has that provided?
Right.
That's
Yeah,
helped
yeah, yeah.
that's helped Dave save 20 hours a month now, allowing him to focus on this and that. So bring it to life as well. Um, so yeah, key reward recognition. I think to me that kind of stuff, I do it all the time in a way my team gets something from it. Too much of it, I think, is starts to become a bit too much. But enough, I think, it's the balance of all these things, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it shows that your team's moving in the right direction, and the fact that
Mm,
they're getting involved in that. And because if you're not experienced, or you've not experienced saying thank you very much for helping me with that, or thinking
yes,
about where other people have helped you, so that you can
yeah,
celebrate that. It's at first when
yeah.
you go into a team that's not, I suppose, psychologically safe, they're not up for sharing that
No,
information, are they? They
no,
don't think like that.
no,
So,
no, no, no. Right.
so
Yeah.
it moved in the right direction, Jim. One thing I wanted to discuss, and I'm conscious I don't want to be bending
Mm,
your ear for too long, but you mentioned to me one important thing in leadership is the nice versus kind piece.
yes, yes.
Now,
Yeah.
I've come across this before a while back, but I know there will be people obviously listening that haven't. But if you could showcase nice versus kind, and why that's important in creating strong
Yeah.
teams.
So again, in leadership, I think it's important. You got nice versus kind. So I suppose nice leaders, which are always great because they're nice, aren't they? But often if they are always nice or trying to be nice and be accepted, almost they're avoiding things that need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Confrontation, difficult conversations. Um, they don't want to upset people.
Yeah.
And I get that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Mm.
They're thinking, oh, if I said that to them, it might upset them or might make them think I'm not a good person or something like that. So, and they often don't know they're doing that because they think that's a good thing that they're nice and they don't want to upset people or make people think bad of them. So, but it's important to be kind, and actually, kind is different. Kind is being honest,
Yeah.
and courageous. I think is an important behavior of being kind. I think, and that courage to have those difficult conversations, and bring people together to share different views, but ultimately setting on a way forward that helps everyone. Um, and that for me is critical for growth, because often, if there is a toxic culture or some behaviors going on that are impacting others, if that's not dealt with by nice leaders, it starts to become part of the culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
know it. And
Yeah.
it's almost accepted that we have a toxic culture here, or we have bad behaviors, or there's leaders that don't do things, or I don't know, it's that kind of stuff. So if you don't address that stuff, then it just carries on. And for me, it's again back to my sort of approach, especially when I join. And it isn't that there's a toxic culture, but if there are ineffective behaviors, almost the opposite of the high performing behaviors, if
Yeah.
those things are present and people are demonstrating that, it's important that I understand why, but then start to address it very quickly. And I do that a lot, because if I don't, others will think that's acceptable.
Yeah.
And if you've got junior members or people who are just coming in or trying to understand the culture, to me the culture is how we turn up.
Yeah.
It's how we
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
it's who we are, and how we display ourselves, how we act, how we talk. Um, and if someone's constantly interrupting or always saying that change isn't a good idea, we've tried that before, it never works, that kind of thing, often I see. It's important that we understand that and then we start to stop it,
Yeah.
and help that person understand that that is not helping and start to move them, shift them to a better way of thinking, acting, behaving. So for me, being kind is actually a better outcome for all. Being nice, unfortunately, can start to cause some of those those behaviors to thrive in a
Yeah.
in a business as well. So key to be nice versus kind. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's important.
Because it can undermine what you're doing, Jim, can't it? I think if you yeah
Can. Yeah,
if you let it
yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like weak leadership, because I sort of say this sometimes. I will say, one of the things one of my things I did, especially when I was at the Coast Guard, was show vulnerability, which
Yeah.
actually across the leadership there, especially in a military type organization, that could be seen as a sign of weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I didn't see it as a sign of weakness. I saw it as a sign of being open, to my team, that I am just like you. I'm like you. I'm no different. I just have slightly different responsibilities, and I got to do things. So actually, showing vulnerability, often people realize you are human, and you may not be as bad as I thought you are. So it allows people to change their judgments a bit of you. So I still do that. I'm not too open by sharing everything you say, but a couple of occasions where I was really busy and I was having to do a presentation, and I struggled a bit with the presentation, a bit of public speaking and things I told my team about it. Um,
Nice. Nice.
and I
That's good.
explained to them what I should have done was this, and I felt really really embarrassed, and they were like, "Oh wow, if that can happen to him, then
Yeah.
so people come and engage me after that and said, "Oh, I struggle with that, and it's great to know that you have that challenge as well." So So I think like often these things is that honesty, that courage as well, having those conversations, but helps people grow,
Yeah.
as opposed to the other way, which is not
Y-
positive at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And if you thinking about obviously your change, I'll ask you a quick question about change
Mm,
to wrap
mm,
things up in a minute. But obviously you get resistance. There'll be leaders when you go into new teams. We were talking about
mm,
nice versus kind and the impact of
mm.
resistance and that kind of thing. Do you have anything that you can share about how you try and overcome that resistance, or how you try and move the individual through the process?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And there always will be resistance.
Yeah,
And it's important in a way because that will allow you to adapt to make sure what the change that you're delivering is inclusive. Um, because if people don't understand, so often for me, resistance comes from a few things: fear, a lack of understanding or clarity, and helping people understand that to me. So often it starts with a conversation, doesn't it?
yeah,
Because if people are resistant, and it depends where they are in an organization. If they're a senior leader and they're resistant, that has a risk,
yeah,
because they can start to be quite vocal, and others will then follow them, and then you'd see more resistance building out. So if I see senior leaders that are actively resistant and vocal about it, then it's important that I get face to face with them to understand why they don't understand it, or they don't think it's a good idea, or things like this. But then allowing me to talk that through, and I think that's what's important: communicate that,
yeah,
understand their fears, and it isn't about solving that. Being empathetic always, because people may not get it,
yeah, yeah,
and they don't want to say they don't get it because that might be a bit embarrassing. So
yeah,
helping them, communicate in a slightly different way, understand what motivates them, and whether this change is actually helps that, or things like that. Again, it's important. Change resistance common, isn't it?
yeah,
And there's not huge change resistance where I'm working now, which is quite interesting. In my previous role there was a lot of change resistance, so it's almost the opposite, which sometimes has other challenges because they just want change. Bring it on, bring it on. I suppose resistance comes a little bit from busyness.
yeah,
People are almost too busy. And there's a bit of a paradox there, especially when digital transformation can help make them less busy
yeah,
because it can take away the mundane, or help them do things in a more effective, efficient way. So again, trying to understand that, where the friction shows up, how they work today in terms of using digital or the tools and things like this. And often they might be working in a slightly outdated way with the skills that haven't really evolved over the years. So there's a real subtle, evolutionary type changes that start to help people, and you don't thrust it at them to say, right, everybody's going to go on a 5-day training course and you'll be amazing. It's subtle little changes that start to, give them some skills to solve some of the problems that they have today, which might be around planning or communication or
yeah,
tracking information or finding information. Those kind of things start to free up a few minutes or hours and things like this, and allows people then to use that time to think about more improvements and things like this. So yeah, it's a balancing act. I think I keep saying this: everything is a balancing act in this business,
yeah.
that we work in. So yeah.
And it goes back to you mentioned it a few times, continuous improvement. It goes back, you're not going to get
Mm,
things right constantly, are you? You're
no,
always
no,
learning. I know from conversations I've had with you, you're keen to always improve and always learn as an individual. And I think,
very much.
I think that's important. I love the piece you said about vulnerability, because it lowers the barrier straight away, doesn't it? And
Mm,
that's
yes,
that's going to be another thing that helps with the trust and and and,
very
and
much.
build that psychological safety. So, I can't wrap up, Jim, without asking you about change and transformation projects, because you've been involved
Mm,
in some big ones over the years, some chunky ones, and there will be people listening who are going through change and transformation at the moment. Quite often, a lot of these things, well, they do fail, don't they? But
Yes.
they have struggles and challenges. So, just very quickly, what do you see? What are the common occurrences you see when you're going through that, and how can people sort of work around that or get around those challenges?
So I think there's some statistics somewhere that like 60, 70% of digital transformations fail. And even ones I've done have failed, and it's good that they do fail in a way because you learn from those, don't you? So,
Yes.
um, and again, there's probably no silver bullet to all of this stuff, but there's a few things that I always try and put in place. Ownership to me is really important. So accountability,
Right.
ownership. Yeah. So especially if someone's sponsoring the change, and the benefits that the change will deliver, they will get most from. So it's important that they sponsor that and own it from start to finish. And part of that role that they have is to make sure they're communicating it, they're helping people buy into it, they're influencing all this kind of stuff. So not having accountability, and again, one thing I've learned over the years, especially around change, people often only listen to two or three people, normally the person at the top and their
Ah,
direct line manager.
right.
There's a few others that might influence them, but that's roughly the thing. So it's important, most senior person or something is communicating that, showing that they're on board and they're driving it. And then it's going down into the management teams and they're doing a similar thing. So that really starts to help as well. So in terms of doing this in a way that changes, I suppose, helping organisations change. Is that sort of what you were more aiming at?
Yeah. How people can overcome the challenges, really, the regular challenges that you'd see. I suppose any
Yeah,
wins that you've, for
yeah,
example, a tip there where most people only listen to a couple of people when it comes to change.
yeah. So communication to me, back to that,
Yeah,
communication is key for digital transformations. If people don't understand what you're doing and why
yeah,
you're doing it and what's in it for them, engagement, adoption often drifts, doesn't it? So having a communication plan across a transformation and multiple plans often, because they're complex transformations. They're not just one thing's been upgraded or changed or
yeah,
replaced. Um, it's a culture change. I often find, we're changing people.
yeah,
Um, we're going to put a new system in that solves all of our problems, and whether it solves their problems, it might have solved IT's problems. There's benefits in it for you, or what's in it for them, and having that way to communicate these things, tell everyone what you're doing, when you're doing it, that regular comms drop all the time, I think is important. um but then back to the sort of, I used a few change frameworks over the years. ADCAR I quite like.
right,
I always
yeah,
sort of go back to that awareness, telling everyone what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's in it for them. But then that desire, build the desire into what you're doing, so people start to want more and turn up to things and learn even. And then that brings it into the knowledge, help them, especially if it's process change and things that are ERP systems are always a
yeah,
fun
yeah,
one to do, because it isn't just the technology. Often you're replacing possibly defined processes or possibly
yeah,
undefined processes across the whole business, and having that move that away from it's an IT project to it's a business transformation project, is
yeah.
quite tricky. And I've done two or three in my career, and they never go well. So I don't know anyone I've ever spoke to across my sort of peer group that have ever said that's gone well. But communicating it, helping people build the skills as well needed, especially if they have to start doing things in a different way. Um, but then as you start to go live with the change, reinforcement, celebrate, recognizing it has made things better. because you often find people, maybe some are adopting it, others aren't. How you embed that into business as usual, so it becomes a sort of automatic behavior
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we do these things in that way. That takes time, really does. I'm doing stuff at Ardent around risk management at the moment, and it's taking time. Everyone's starting to do it, but we just got to keep reinforcing it. That's really good. We're getting that. That's better now. Reinforce, and then eventually they'll do it automatically. It will become part of their daily routine, their lives, that how they work. So process change, I find, is always an interesting one, especially when the process doesn't really exist or
yeah,
isn't really defined. Having to define it, tell everybody what that process is, and then building technology that drives the process is part of that transformation. So people, processes, data, technology. I always sort of think those four things fit into digital transformation quite well. And often when you're doing it, you're doing all four at the same time.
yeah.
So it's a bit of a blend again to all of that. But yeah.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Jim. I think there's a couple of things that I've picked up from you and a couple of regular words that are dropped into the conversation that we've just had. And I think communication is big, isn't it? Irrespective of what you're doing,
Very much.
communicate, keep people
Yeah. Yeah.
informed of exactly what's happening. So, listen, Jim, I know you're super busy. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the podcast, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Excellent. Thanks, Adrian. All the best.
Cheers, Jim.
Nice.